Well, good morning, everyone. It's lovely to be here with you. As the speaker coordinator, I usually get to know well ahead of time when I'm going to be speaking. And this time was no exception. So I usually start out by looking at what the word for the day is. And this week, or this month, the word for the day is forgive, in case you just forgot it since we spoke about the daily word a few minutes ago. But which it just really speaks to me. In fact, our younger daughter, who used to come here to Unity, one time told me she was sick and tired of that word forgive, and couldn't we find something else to talk about? But here I am talking about forgive once again. Our Course in Miracles book tells us that forgiveness is the key to happiness, and that if you really want to walk a path of love, you will release all grievances. Talks a lot about forgiveness, and of course, Unity teachings have been focused on forgiveness a long, long time. So it's interesting that when I looked at this word forgive, the word was also part, the story they refer to in the Bible is from Luke, and it's the story of the prodigal son. Now, we've had through the years several people who've talked about the prodigal son. It's a story, a parable that has made a huge impact, I think, not only on Unity, but Christianity and perhaps even the world in general, because it is a story of forgiveness. It is a story of a young man who decides that he's the second son, the youngest son, the one who's not going to inherit as much of the father's holdings as the first son. The second son is the one who's kind of the afterthought son. In tradition and culture, sometimes they don't even get to inherit anything. But in this story, the second son goes to his father and asks if he can have his portion of his inheritance early. Now, in culture in that area of the East, in the time of Jesus and before, people did not get their inheritance ahead of time. So the very first thing that happens is they go against the norms of the culture, and the father does give the son his inheritance ahead of time. Now the Bible says the son takes this and squanders it. Wild women, who knows exactly what squandering it consisted of in those days, but he left. He left the place of his birth, the place of his livelihood, went to the city and squandered his inheritance and found himself totally destitute. So totally destitute he had no food to eat even and no place to sleep. So what does he do? He gathers up his courage and he goes out to a neighboring farm or a place close to the village and asks the farmer if he can do something to earn his living. And the farmer says, "Oh yeah, you can help me take care of my pigs. They're over there. Here, go give them the slops for the day and take care of them." Now this is like the worst fate possible for a young Jewish boy, because pigs are anathema. Pigs are the lowest of the low. You don't go out and, well, you definitely don't eat any bacon, which you don't you don't stay with the pigs. You don't have anything to do with pigs. They're unclean. But this young man who is so broken, he goes out and he not only slops the pig, he finds himself eating what the pigs are eating. He's so hungry. And finally, in the midst of this despair, this horror, he comes to himself and he thinks, even my father's servants have food to eat and a place to lay their head. I should have never left my father's house. I should have stayed where I would have been treated at least better than a pig. And so he gathers up his courage and goes home. Now the story says that his father has been in deep mourning for his son who has been lost. The father has no idea where his son is or what has happened to him. And the father every day stands out by the road and stares into the distance, looking to see if perhaps he can hear or see his son. And so he sees him coming from afar off. And he says, at last, my son who was lost is found. And he runs and gets the servants to slay a lamb and cook a huge feast, and he gathers everybody together to celebrate the return of his son. Well, this is a beautiful story, especially for those of us who are parents and grandparents who have maybe lost a child and thought that they were gone for good forever. But then there's the elder brother. Now, I identify a lot with the elder brother because the elder brother is the responsible one, the one who has stayed with the father and the family farm and done the chores and taken care of things and, maybe even done the dishes, who knows, whatever it is, whatever chores need to be done, and the support person and the one who, cleaned up and took care of the animals and so on and so forth. And the elder brother looks at this feast and this joy and goes, What? What about me? I'm the one who did all this sacrificing. I'm the one who's been responsible and reliable. Why hasn't my father ever even given me a cake, let alone a lamb, a fatted lamb for a feast for my friends? What is wrong with this picture? Well, the father says to this son, he says, you don't understand. You have never been a father yet. To lose a child, to have that child leave, and then in the midst of your despair, have that child return. And this is what we're celebrating, the renewal, the rejoining, the reunion of this perfect family now that we are able to all be together. That's all well and good. It's a lovely story. I'm afraid I still am not always so sure that I don't have those same resentments and upsets and anger that the elder brother does. Because I still often feel, sigh, sorry to say, but my ego gets in charge. And I'm the one who's put upon and used and abused because I'm the responsible one. I'm sure nobody else here ever has that feeling, of course, but how do we get over those feelings of resentment and anger? How can we, I must say, I've done a lot of spiritual seeking and searching and reading through the years, and I still fall into that trap once in a while of resentment and anger and judgment. And then this is where that second word for the month or for the day comes in, the word wisdom, the power and ability to maybe turn that judgment and resentment into wisdom. Charles Fillmore talks about wisdom when he wrote his book, The 12 Powers, or wrote the essays that his book was made of. He used the word judgment instead of wisdom. And it's only been in the last, 30, 40 years that the word judgment has been replaced by wisdom. as our society, our culture has moved past liking the word judgment and moved into using a different word. But Charles Fillmore said that James, the son of Zebedee, was the power of judgment, or discernment, maybe. He said that when you were dealing with substantial things, wisdom is the faculty that in men wisely chooses and determines. Wisely chooses and determines. And how do we turn to wisely choosing when we're in judgment? That's when the second representative, I think, comes in. The second representative is Deborah, the judge. And this, of course, is the feminine aspect. What does Deborah mean? Deborah is intuitive wisdom. Deborah is the turning within to hear the voice that is speaking to us from within. That little voice of consciousness that is telling us, okay, maybe you want to look at this a little differently. Maybe you want to quit sitting in judgment that you're not being treated fairly, that all things are conspiring against you and people are using you. Maybe you can sit still for a moment and hear that intuitive voice telling you that you really are loved. You really have that power of light that shines forth from you, that ignites you and can spill out from you and help light the light in everyone else. It was interesting to me how many stories of the prodigal son showed up in my life this week. Number one, on Monday night, Tom and I have this bad habit of liking to watch Bull on TV. Does anybody else watch Bull once in a while? It's so interesting to me because it is often a story that has a moral message. And this last week was actually, believe it or not, a story of two brothers. An older brother who's the responsible one and helps his father and his mother and goes to school and gets a degree and works in a, blah, 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 blah. And the second son is the one who fell prey to addictions and ran away from home and had to go into treatment. And, the father and the mother kept bailing the younger son out and paying for his recovery and rehab, and sounded like not just once, but several times. And then all of a sudden, the mother is murdered. And nobody knows how or why. The story the father tells is that she fell off a ladder backwards and hit her head and died on the spot. The autopsy says, nope, not what happened. That the injuries to her head are not concurrent with a fall off a ladder, even though it was perhaps the same spot. But she had been hit on the back of the head with something round. Well, Bull, of course, solves the crime through the use of juries and all this wonderful stuff they do on TV. And it turns out the one person that's first accused of the crime is the younger brother, because he's been the one who's been the drug addict and the ne'er-do-well and he hasn't been arrested exactly, but maybe he is arrested. I don't remember exactly, but he is there on trial, and he didn't do it. And he wants to find the truth. What happened to his mother? Well, in the long run, turns out the older brother had killed her because he had needed money for his business that was failing, and he had gone to his parents to ask for money to bail out his business, and his mother said, "No, it's time for you to learn to stand up on your own 2 feet." And he, in a fit of anger, hit her in the back of the head and killed her. And then his father helped him cover up the crime because the father couldn't bear to lose the good son to jail. Now I thought, isn't this amazing? The story of the prodigal son on contemporary, in-the-moment TV. And, Tom and I have been looking at doing our will. And we've been dealing with, what do you do when you have a child that's brilliant and talented and worthy of so much and so accomplished and has her whole life in perfect order, apparently, and then you have some other children that are probably not going to be there? What do you do? Do you do the intelligent thing and you split the estate in thirds and everybody gets a third? Or do you do the maybe not so intelligent, but the thing that your wisdom says is fairer, and you give the bulk of your estate to the 2 who need it? Or what do you do? This is a question that we wrestle with. And I know it's a question that not only we wrestle with, but lots of people wrestle with, because you don't want to punish the one who's done good or make a life of misery for the one who hasn't done so good. What is fair? What is wise? Tom's older brother actually also had the same problem with his 3 children. What did he do? He set up a trust fund and left the oldest one in charge of the trust fund so that the second 2 would inherit as, not all at once, but as life went on. And that was, of course, the wise, intelligent thing to do. But when the time came and the 3 inherited, what happened? The oldest one was in for a lot of resentment and anger and upset because the 2 younger ones said, "Well, why don't I get a say in how much money I get and how I can spend it and when I can spend it?" And, it's just really a quandary to live in this human existence and to discern what is the wise thing to do, what is the loving thing to do, what is the intelligent thing to do, and yet, what's going to bring peace in our lives. Because I think when it boils down to it, the wise, the intelligent, the smart thing to do is to do what brings peace. And that's what we're all here for. We want the peace of God. We want to know the love of God, not only for ourselves, but for our children, our friends, our family. From John, the quote is, "Do not judge by appearances, but judge with right judgment." In Linda Martella-Whitsitt's book, which Roger talked about a couple of weeks ago, Divine Audacity, she talks about the power of wisdom as having 3 parts. The first part is judgment, the evaluating and choosing part. The second part is discernment, the part that includes the questioning. what should I do? Then the meditating and the envisioning. And the third part of wisdom is intuition. The pausing and going inside and waiting for that little voice. Maybe a little voice, it may be a hunch, it may be, just a letter that comes in the mail, or a friend who calls you up, or somebody in passing says some word to you that goes click. I never thought of it that way. That's the intuition part of wisdom. Hugh Prather, one of my favorite teachers, who's been gone quite a while now, tells us that when we are in that place of judgment, when we are evaluating and trying to decide which way to go, he says, where we make the list and we put the good points and then the bad points, or what the pros and the cons on the sheet of paper, and we look at it rationally and we try to judge which is the way we should go. Hugh Prather said one of the greatest things I ever thought was so wise. He said, when you're being forced to make a decision that way, and you don't know, you truly, honestly don't know, the thing to do is not to choose, not to decide, but just to wait. That's awfully hard for me, as my husband can tell you. But wait, because it may very well be that while you think you need to make this decision now, maybe you don't have to make it now. Maybe it can wait another few days or a week or a month even before you make that decision. So pause and just don't choose. And as you do move into that pause, you feel in your heart which of these choices feels most peaceful. Which way seems like it will bring peace for not only me, but for other people that are involved? If that is the way of peace, then let me choose that one. And the quote from Linda Martello-Whitsitt in Divine Audacity, "You know when you have judged rightly, for you are in heaven, in a state of peace, harmony, and well-being." And then the second part of wisdom is the discernment part. And she says that includes questioning and meditating and envisioning. So we envision, and that's where we learn which one feels peaceful. You can imagine yourself, visioning yourself. Okay, if I take this path, if I make this decision, how do I see myself in this situation? Does it feel good and right and peaceful? If I walk down the other side of the decision, how does that feel? I love that this step includes visioning, because the Lenten word for today is vision. We vision what is our right choice. And then finally, at the end of this visioning process, this discerning process, we go with intuition. We move into intuition. And Linda Martello-Whitsitt tells the story of Dr. Terry Brazelton, the pediatrician. who was grocery shopping one day, and he saw a mother with a small child, and the small child was having a temper tantrum right there in the grocery store, laying on the floor, kicking and screaming. And the mother was kicking and screaming and yanking at the child herself, try to get up, we gotta go now. And Dr. Brazelton was, first of all, oh my God, how could she be doing this to this poor child, and wants to run over and rescue the child. But on the way to doing that, he got a flash of intuition, and when he reached the mother, he turned to her and said, "Grocery shopping with a little kid is really hard, isn't it?" And the mother looked at him and sat down on the floor and started crying. Because she knew at last somebody had that feeling for her. Somebody recognized how difficult her life had become. And the little child looked at her mother and went over and crawled in her mother's lap and started giving her a big hug. And this is the power of intuition. When we pause in the midst of our own judgments, our own upset, and listen for just a moment is all it took, to hear what was the right thing to do. It wasn't to berate the mother. She was already having enough trouble in her life. The right thing to do was to react with love and compassion, and to listen to that voice of intuition. And so we've been wrestling with a few things, a few decisions here for a whole year now. In case you hadn't noticed, this is probably the 1-year anniversary of us moving into COVID awareness. We even canceled our Sunday service the third Sunday in March last year because we didn't know if we could hold a service. We had no idea. We were being told everything was to go on lockdown. Now, I entered that time thinking it was only going to be maybe a month, maybe 2 months. Surprise, here we are, we're still wearing masks. Even those of us who have been fully vaccinated are being told to wear masks when you go out in public, to only see a limited number of people. We're being asked to just hold on just a little bit longer because we are waiting for all of us to be able to walk home together. And by wearing our masks and complying with the guidelines, I think we're getting closer to that day of realizing the divine power and light that is within each one of us. That we are going to walk home together indeed. That we are going to be more and more aware of the light and the love that is the truth about each one of us. Even behind the masks, we still can see the light in each other's eyes. We can still feel the fact that we love and care for one another. That is what we truly want. We want to be able to support one another and help one another in whatever way it means. Even if we embrace those whose belief system is not like ours, who voted a different way than we did, who may be refusing to get a vaccine or wear a mask, or whatever it is that we have somehow judged as maybe a little ignorant. I don't know. I found myself in judgment this last week really fast. And I wondered what that was all about. A relative of ours who I really care a lot about and love dearly visited for the first time in almost a year. And I heard words coming out of that person's mouth that I actually had heard before. But for some reason this time they pushed my buttons. And I realized that this person was just making a joke, a joke in quotes, by calling other people that he was looking at names, disparaging names that really upset me. And then my daughter got in the same place with a neighbor who called her a name that just pushed all my buttons. And I went, what is this? Why am I so judgmental after 30 or 40 years of Unity teaching about forgiveness and light and love and everybody's, walking home together? Why am I in so much judgment? And then a friend of mine, it's not just was, talking to me and I thought, oh my gosh, she's got so much judgment. Doesn't she know what karma is going to do to her? It was like, wow, out there, that's where it's at. It's, not me. And then I had to meditate for a while and work with our Course in Miracles lessons and go, oh yeah, why am I seeing this out there? It's because I have it right here. I have that tendency to want to call people names that I don't agree with. To think that they're ignorant because they're not wearing a mask, or they're wearing a mask, or whatever side of the debate I happen to be on at that moment in my day, because I've been on both sides. So what do we do? And then, of course, to top it all off, I judged myself for judging. You're the great spiritual teacher. You're the one who's been reading this. You should know better. And so back to the word for today. Forgive. I extend forgiveness to myself. Today, I open my heart, and with love and compassion, I forgive myself. I remind myself that everyone makes mistakes and deserves understanding and forgiveness, even me. I remember how the prodigal son's father received him with joy when he came home. This joy is mine when I let go of self-condemnation and finally come home to myself. So let's take a few moments now in meditation. And come home to ourselves. We just breathe for a moment into our heart. And breathe into that power center, which is where our wisdom lies, our solar plexus. And we visualize a golden light that is the truth of who we are, that resides in our hearts and indeed in our solar plexus. We visualize this beautiful gold light. It might be bright yellow, like the color of the month, just widening, expanding outward, and filling every cell in our body with yellow, pure light. We are glowing with this beautiful light. And we visualize this light flowing outward and touching the lights of all those who are here with us, whether on Zoom or in the church itself. We let our whole Unity community be filled with beautiful yellow light, the light of wisdom, the light of discernment, the light of intuition. And we know that as we dedicate ourselves to using this wisdom, this judgment power with love, that we will be able to open our doors, open our hearts, open our minds, and welcome all those who disagree with us. Because indeed, the light of God is within every single one of them. We just see this beautiful yellow light shining forth, lighting everyone in the city, everyone in our state, and throughout our world. And we say thank you. Thank you, sweet Spirit, for this brilliant, beautiful light. And we let it shine. Amen and amen. And let us now move into our prayer for protection, just right where you are. Because we indeed know the truth of who we are. And as we affirm it, let us add the words after each phrase, I am, so that we say, we are, and then I am. So, for instance, we will say, the light of God surrounds us. I am the light. Are we ready? The light of God surrounds us. I am the light. The love of God enfolds us. I am the love. The power of God protects us. I am the power of God. And the presence of God watches over us. I am the presence of God. Wherever we are, God is, and all is well. Let us repeat that last phrase together one more time. Wherever we are, God is, and all is well. Amen.